Okay, so the first part of this was about the dangers of carbon monoxide. This is just about the science of how chemistry deals with carbon monoxide. And there's a technology that's in most cars, most modern cars, called the catalytic converter. And there's two different types of catalytic converters. Okay, we are going to be looking at only the lead burner catalytic converter because it's the simplest reaction to wrap our heads around in this online learning. But there is a second type of catalytic converter called a thermal converter. And that's a really cool one too, because instead of just pumping more oxygen into the system, it heats it up so much that the carbon monoxide rips away oxygen from another pollutant called nitrogen dioxide, which we're going to be talking about in the third mini video. Okay. I don't know if you've ever been under a car, but they're hooked up to your tailpipe and they're underneath the car. They're quite expensive. So if something goes wrong with your catalytic converter, they can be very, very pricey to fix. And emission standards require that all modern cars have one. Okay. So we're not going to do a thermal converter. We're going to be doing the lead burner type. So I'm just going to get rid of this and pretend this was never here. And we're just going to go through how the catalytic converter uses a little bit of chemistry to make it work. So what a catalytic converter does in an engine. Now, this is not what happens in your house, right? You don't have a catalytic converter hooked up to your furnace per se. It brings in additional oxygen to make carbon dioxide. And we can just say we have a half mole of oxygen to make this balanced. That's one reaction of how carbon monoxide is made more safe. Now, obviously, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, but it doesn't kill you. The other way that's really cool is carbon monoxide can be added in a thermal converter. Now, this is the other way. This is not going to be on your test, but in case you're wondering, and it makes carbon dioxide and nitrogen gas, which is really cool. So I think we need like a half mole of this, and then I think we're good. Okay. So that's the other way we can use chemistry to fix the problem. Okay, we're going to move on to the other pollutants, nitrogen oxides and sulfur oxides. Okay. Oxides of nitrogen are mostly made by nature. 80% of nitrogen oxide pollutants come from nature. Humans make the rest. The 20% comes from us. So where does nitrogen come from? Well, nitrogen comes from the atmosphere and burning the atmosphere and making it really hot, or impurities in fuel. Okay. And it's made, if you want to think of it as simply as carbon monoxide, nitrogen can combine with oxygen to make nitrogen oxides. Okay. Now, of course, this isn't quite balanced. You could just double this and now it's balanced. Okay. That can react further. What's happening on this next page? Yeah. So it's the same way like cars remove these impurities the same way by converting it into nitrogen. So nitrogen oxides get basically ripped apart with extra oxygen and are made into nitrogen and oxygen. So it basically just pulls the extra oxygen out. Okay. Now, all of these different types of ways cars go about their business, they all do the same thing. So it's kind of like if somebody says, yo, these are all the same animals, right? Cougar, a mountain lion, and a puma. These are kind of the same, right? Like you might hear redneck or hillbilly, right? Or how about ketchup and catsup? Or if you're somebody who's older, they're like, hey, are you playing your Nintendo? Hey, you playing your Nintendo? Hey, you playing your Nintendo? Hey, quit playing your Nintendo. They're all the same thing. Okay. All right, so let's talk about sulfur. This is where the reactions get a little bit more confusing. I'm going to break down the reactions in a third little mini video in a second. Okay, I'll have some links to some really cool videos. Sulfur comes from nature, and sulfur comes from volcanic eruptions. So sulfur is trapped in the crust, and if it gets heated up, it comes out. And the two oxides of sulfur are sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide. And they are bad for our lungs, but when they react with water, they create a very potent acid rain, sulfuric acid or sulfurous acid. Okay. Most of the sulfur that isn't erupted from volcanoes comes from human activity, not from cars, but from coal. So if you had a chunk of coal and the coal isn't 100% pure, as it burns, the sulfur that's in it will turn into sulfur dioxide or sulfur trioxide.